In this video, I'm going to be philosophizing on the personality characteristic of self-care concerning distinctions within cognizance and or consistency and or okayness. Cognizance pertains to distinctions within personality characteristics that most concern one's internal and or external conditions that one is monitoring in relation to distinct navigations within one's essential and or necessitated underlying psychological needs, compared to one's consistency in terms of engaging certain self-care practices and or conducts that are meaningful to satisfy uniquely the essential and or necessitated needs, meaningful to engage more homeostatic satisfactions that are meaningful for cultivating one's optimal healthy psychological functioning, yet often are connected also to self-maintenance that is distinct from self-care, yet is most related to self-care, that's most meaningful to maintain a homeostatic equilibrium, engaging more allostatic needs in relation to more self-maintenance compared to the deprivations within homeostatic intrinsic motivations that are related to some lower order cognitions within allostatic motivations, and engage higher order cognitions as one engages more self-maintenance, which is distinct than self-care, yet it's still within duty of care. Compared to okayness, it's most meaningful for allowing one to experience certain satisfactions in relation to the essential and or necessitated psychological needs, with most meaningful activations within the hypothalamus that's mostly responsible for regulating thirst and or hunger and or desire for sex and or love, romantic relationships. It's meaningful for engaging sexual desire and or often also the thermoregulation of internal and or external conditions that are appropriate for navigating what's meaningful in terms of clothing and or certain shelter, providing certain thermostatic multifunctions in terms of its allowances and or disallowances that are meaningful for navigations appropriate to engage the okayness within one's being. Okayness is meaningful for allowancing one to cultivate cognizance in terms of what is more appropriate to one's internal and or external living conditions. And this allowance is for one to engage the appropriate self-care within distinct navigations of certain underlying psychological needs satisfactions calibrated to one's self-preferences. And you can see that these are neatly connected within self-care. They're all distinct and they have distinct conducts associated with distinct feelings and or positive meaningful emotions that are meaningful for connecting one to certain essential and or underlying necessitated psychological needs that are unique to one's self-preferences. And I mean self-preferences. I do not mean that you truly are satisfying certain underlying psychological needs, even the essential psychological needs, drinking poisonous water and or water that has a taste that you judge to be distasteful within what's correctly distasteful, perhaps regurgitating it and or vomiting as there may be a toxin in it, with a distaste for certain bitters and or acidic, often sour flavors that may be displeasing to an individual. So it's the uniquely self-preferences that allowance for certain meaningful experiences that allowance us to experience a sense of okayness and or positive subjective well-being, and or the disallowances itself is highly meaningful for allowancing and or maintaining subjective well-being within the disallowance. And the disallowance means that there's a cancellation in terms of a navigation within the internal and or external environment that prevents and or mitigates threat and or injury and or harm from often entering and or inflicting threat and or harm and or injury onto the self. For example, a disallowance would be there's a fire and or you may be more attentive with increased pupil dilation and or the hotness of the fire increases the desire to avoid the dangerousness of the flames and or approach the flames to control the flames with distinct directions. Yet the aversion is the disallowance to prevent one from engaging in what is harmful that may allowance for more positive, meaningful emotions, compared to the allowances in terms of one's masterfulness of the flame, approaching it to engage more masterfully the containing of the flame within one's cultivations of self-conducted learning and or self-disciplining within the masterfulness one elaborates the existing priors in terms of the appropriate tools and or technologies one may employ to engage one's skills to more meaningfully contain and or direct the desired direction of meaningful effect in terms of what one desires to conduct with the flame, be it to barbecue and or cook tasty meals. That's all I want to say for this video. Hope you have an awesome and continuous lifestyle.